Okay, we are now at Volume 2, Part 2. I don't know how long this is going to be, but I'm going to try and at least get 30 minutes. Prologue. Effa listened to Carla the entire time she was washing dishes. From both her chattiness and her returning plumpness, she could tell that Carla was relieved at Lutz finally coming back home. She had fallen disconcertingly quiet while Lutz had been gone. Not to mention, I've never seen my husband talk that much before. It's too hard for me to believe. Carla, while hiding that they had been summoned to the temple, talked at length about how much her normally quiet husband, Deed, cared about their son. It seemed they finally understood all too well how hard Lutz was working after they went to the Merchant's Guild and saw him do his job. Sure, he said he was learning his letters with mine, but I never thought he'd know how to read paperwork that confusing and wordy. Carla gave an exaggerated laugh, but it was clear that she was happy to see her child's growth. She had basically started to brag nonstop. Effa had paled with terror when Mine told her that the Lutz family had been summoned by the High Priest for a discussion, remembering her own experience at the temple, but it seemed everything had gone perfectly well for them. That was a relief. Well, yeah, the High Priest was in charge, not the High Bishop. There was a difference. By the way, how are you doing, Effa? You seem kind of sick a lot of the time, but I'm guessing it's calming down by now? I think it's about time to tell the kids about it, said Effa with a smile as she rubbed her... Yep. She is pregnant. Oh, God. I hope to God that the baby was conceived while Thule and Mine were out of the house. Or out of the building. Because that's a little awkward. With a smile as she rubbed her stomach, her once awful morning sickness had begun to calm down, which meant she'd most likely survive the most dangerous time for miscarriages. Effa began tidying up the clean dishes, feeling happy. Right, Effa, Mine was a big help to us this time. Tell her thanks for me, would you? Effa nodded to Carla and went back home. Mine was waiting right at the door, having probably heard her footsteps. She said she would help put away the dishes, then stood on a chair in order to reach the shelves, and lined up the clean dishes one by one. Mine couldn't draw water from the well, nor could she wash dishes. Effa knew that she was just trying to help where she could. But when Mine tried too hard, she ended up collapsing. Being a bit more restrained would be ideal. Mom, are you feeling better yet? Are you sure you're okay? Asked Mine after putting away all the dishes. Mine, you see, I have a baby in my belly. You're going to be a big sister. What? Mine got so surprised she nearly fell off the chair. Effa smiled as she held her steady. Waiting until she finished with the dishes had been the right call. Mine climbed off the chair and looked at Effa's belly curiously. It wasn't large enough to be visible yet. For a second she thought that Mine didn't believe her, but then she grabbed her head and started saying unfathomable things again. No, I barely remember anything from the pregnancy books I read, since I didn't think any of it would matter to me. What was that breathing technique again? I guess we should be quiet when the morning sickness hits. Make sure you get enough to eat. Oh, wait, they called it morning sickness, right? Hold on. Oh, I guess they didn't call it morning sickness. It just said it was morning sickness. Make sure you get enough to eat and encourage consistent exercise, I think. What has gotten into her? Mine was cradling her head as if she was extremely anxious about it. Maybe she was nervous about having a new sibling. Effa began to wonder if she should console Mine when Thule, who had been preparing for work, came rushing into the kitchen with an excited cry. Really? Wow, I'll sew some clothes and diapers for the baby. Effa smiled at Thule, who immediately thought of things she could do to help the baby. Mine began almost competitively murmuring about what she could do for the baby, too. Effa didn't expect Mine to be able to do anything, so just celebrating the baby would be enough for her. But that wouldn't be enough for Mine, so after some thought, her head shot up with a beaming smile. I'm going to make a picture book for the baby. A what? I'm not sure what that is. Effa and Thule both looked at each other, heads tilted in confusion. It's a book of pictures. And I'll make a book to help kids read. That's just like you, Mine. Thule's eyes widened at Mine's explanation, then she burst into laughter. Mine always did think about books, but in the end, Effa was just glad she wasn't opposed to getting a new sibling. Working hard for the baby means you'll be a good older sister too, Mine. I'm going to shower that baby with tons of love. Thule's going to use her sewing skills to make clothes and stuff, so I'm going to put everything I have into making educational toys. I'll work hard for the baby. I'm definitely gonna be a good older sister. Oh no, she's getting too excited. In no time at all, Mine's excitement turned from cute to terrifying. This was no doubt the start of an unfathomable rampage. Effa knew this deep inside from all her past experiences with Mine's frenzies. Thule probably felt the same. You'll get a fever with all that excitement, Mine. Try to calm down a little. It's gonna be real hard for Mom, Mine, so you need to take better care of yourself. I know that, I will, so mine said, but her expression made it clear that she wouldn't. Her head was no doubt already filled with these picture books. Seriously? One Wilma, please. Good morning, Lutz. Let's stop by the store before the temple today. When Lutz came to get me, I greeted him while humming. Lutz took a quick step back as if he had seen something horrifying, and then looked at Mom for an explanation. Mine, I'll explain to Lutz. Hurry and get your stuff ready, said Mom while rubbing her temples, so I went to the bedroom. What were some good books for babies? Thinking back to bestsellers, I was pretty sure there was one where it was just a series of pages alternating between someone hiding their face and showing their face. A game of peekaboo, but in picture book form. Don't know what they would think about it. But I didn't know what the equivalent of peekaboo was in this world. I could guess that the process of hiding one's face, then showing it, was universal, but I didn't know what they would say to the baby. Maybe I could ask someone and they would know what I meant. I think it'd be best to just turn one of Mom's stories into a picture book. That seems like it'd be for the best. I'm sorry, Lutz, she got a little too excited over becoming a big sister, so maybe she shouldn't go outside today. She's gonna end up like this when the baby's born anyway. She takes after your husband. You're right, Gunter gets just as excited. Mom shook her head with exasperation, but her smile was still a happy one. Okay, I'm ready. Bye, Mom. I'll be back. Don't push yourself when you're feeling bad. I'll work hard and make lots of money so you can take it easy. Mine, your father said the exact same thing this morning. I left home while Mom giggled at me. First, we were going to the Gilberta Company. I needed to report that I was becoming a big sister and along the way order a Karuta for the orphanage. I talked to Lutz at length about picture books as we walked. Tuli's going to make clothes and diapers for the baby, so I'm going to make picture books. What are those? Books with pictures that are easy for kids to read. I explained while puffing my chest out with pride, which led to Lutz sighing and shaking his head. Come on, a kid that's just been born won't know how to read. Reading aloud to kids is important. I'll read lots and lots of books to him. We'll probably need to make thick paper first, but since babies like to put all sorts of things into their mouths, I think maybe thin boards would be better than paper, or maybe we can make a book out of cloth? Oh, but I've never seen felt here before. How would you even make that? That's what I wonder, because I don't even know how to make that. I won't be able to help at all with cloth books. Lutz, what should I do? I looked up at Lutz, but he was avoiding eye contact, his gaze wavering. I'll be sad if I don't get to help make a picture book, but picture books will tear easily, or maybe even get chewed up, and just thinking about ink in a baby's mouth is, it's too dangerous. I cried on my head, imagining a baby with ink in its mouth and chewed up paper everywhere. Lutz sighed with exasperation and slapped a hand on my shoulder. Calm down, Mine. It'll be next spring before he's born, right? It's not happening tomorrow. But I want to make lots of prototypes and improve until I have something perfect. You going crazy never ends well. You're just going to end up on the floor. Calm down and listen to what people tell you. We arrived at the Gilberta Company as Lutz admonished me. Mark was inside the store, as always, working briskly. Mark, it's Benno here. I want to go to Steek's carpentry workshop again to order more wood boards for Karuta sets. I'll handle it. Today, Mine. The moment Mark said that while getting out supply order boards, my hype shot up so high I could feel it. Guess what, Mark? I'm going to be a big sister. I'm really busy making books, cards, building blocks, and all sorts of things in preparation. Oh, a book for a baby, While you're here, you may want to inform the master of this. Mark took us to the office with a smile, and I immediately ran up to Benno. Good morning, Benno. I'm going to be a big sister when spring comes, so I'm going to make a picture book for the baby. Huh? What's that? Why didn't she just say a book with pictures instead of her saying it and then saying, what's that? A book for kids. Book for kids, huh? But kids can't read. Benno said the same thing Lutz did. Picture books were perfect for building bonds between parents and children. Just looking at the pictures was fun on its own. And they help kids get used to letters from a young age. Why didn't nobody appreciate their glory? Reading aloud to kids is important. It'll help them learn letters from a young age. One of those might be a good gift for Karina, but who's going to be drawing the art? Me, of course. Filled with love. If it was going to be a gift for my little brother or sister, of course I would make it myself. No. Use the artist you got last time. Otherwise, you'll mess with the kids' taste in art. They might never recover. So mean. The truth hurts. You should thank me for warning you. Benno forced me to promise to use the same artist as last time, Wilma. I headed for the temple feeling pouty, as if my love as an older sister had been rejected. Hey, Mine, if you're going to be making lots of picture books from now on, maybe you should have hire that artist full-time or something. I'm guessing one picture book won't be enough for you. It definitely won't. If I was going to end up getting Wilma's help for a countless number of picture books, it would be wise to make her my attendant. Morning, Fran. Guess what? I'm going to be a big... Watch your language, mine, and that can wait. My report comes first. Lutz interrupted me, pointing out that I was talking too casually, then explained to Fran why I was excited and warned him that I might collapse at any time. I'm guessing she won't calm down until she gets a fever at least once. You can just let her be and wait for that to happen. Understood. I will guard her with caution. However, Sister Mine, please take care not to inform Delia about the baby. The High Bishop has not made any moves as of yet, but he is certainly continuing to gather information on you. Judging by your excitement, I believe the pregnancy and baby will become significant weak points for him to exploit. Fran's warning made the blood drain from my face. If something happened to Mom or her baby now, I had no confidence that I could hold my mana back. There should be no issue with discussing your new products or the Mind Workshop, but your little sibling should go unmentioned. In the temple, the birth of newborns is not a joyous occasion. I felt my excited mood plummet as I thought back to what happened to the flower offering Grey Shrine maidens who ended up pregnant. Fran, trying to cheer me up a bit, changed the subject. You are planning to make many books, surely. Perhaps now is the time to ask for Wilma? You're right. I would like to make Wilma my attendant, if possible, but I'm not sure how to go about it. Fran fell into thought, then suggested we seek the High Priest's permission first. I wrote a letter stating that I had a request, and asked Fran to deliver it to him and get a date for a meeting. At fourth bell after work was done, the High Priest skimmed the letter, then looked at me. Mine, what is your request? I have the time to answer if it is a minor issue. High Priest, please give me Wilma. I made the request as short as I could, which for some reason made the High Priest rub his temples. I do not understand what you're saying. Be more clear. Please give me Wilma, the girl with the smile of a saint, a talent for art, and a deep compassion for others. I tried explaining who Wilma was to the best of my ability, but the High Priest just looked at Fran with utter bafflement. Fran seemed to understand what he wanted just from a glance, and began his explanation immediately. She would like permission to make Wilma her attendant. Wilma is a Grey Shrine maiden specializing in art who once served as Christine's attendant. Ah, she served that art-loving shrine maiden. I believe an expert in music will be more fruitful to Mine's education than an artist. There was a Grey Shrine maiden talented in music, was there not? Select her instead. Rosina is the musician, I believe. Before I knew it, the conversation had shifted from Wilma becoming my attendant to Rosina. I hurriedly interjected before it was too late. High Priest, I need Wilma's help, not Rosina's. How could I make picture books with music? Where are those? How many times have I been asked that question in one day? Oh, hot girl. I would have thought that picture books for kids would at least exist in a place with book-owning nobles, but the High Priest was furrowing his brows hard enough to engrave wrinkles into it. There are books for kids with pictures in them. Surely nobles have books like that. With books as expensive as they are, it would make no sense to make any for kids that might treat them poorly. Books are for learning, and they need only present their information clearly and concisely. It seemed that books aimed at children simply didn't exist at all. Since paper was expensive, and each book had to be handwritten from the ground up, each page was packed to the brim with letters. Putting aside the charts and maps necessary for teaching, no books were built around pictures. I nodded, now understanding why picture books didn't exist here, and for some reason the High Priest also nodded in understanding. I understand that you desire an artist to craft books with pictures, but what you need is education and enrichment. Make both Wilma and Rosina and Wilma your attendants, not just one. Well, but I couldn't take on 2 new attendants at once. That'd be so wasteful, not to mention that I don't even have an instrument, much less the opportunity to play one. I don't have the funds to buy an expensive instrument, and I don't feel the need for music to be involved in my religious education. I see, you certainly cannot practice music without an instrument. I went ahead and nodded with the High Priest, but I didn't have much interest in music either way. I liked listening to it, but I never wanted to play any myself, even if it would be a lovely skill to have. I would rather spend my time reading than practicing to learn an instrument. I expressed my need for an artist and got approval to make Wilma my attendant, so that was that. I started to leave the High Priest's room with satisfaction. Now, Fran, let us go to the orphanage this afternoon to see what Wilma thinks of all this. What Wilma thinks? Are you not making her your attendant? Fran blinked in confusion at my statement. She might not want to serve me because I'm a commoner. My attendants had all been ordered to serve me, and not a single one of them had wanted to. Not Fran, not Gil, and not Delia. It wasn't too long ago that Gil was telling me to my face that he didn't want to serve a commoner. Things were going so well now that I didn't want to ruin everyone's mood by taking in someone who would be unhappy about serving me all the time. Wilma could keep doing the art for me even if she didn't want to be my attendant, though I'd end up constantly nervous about someone stealing her away. Sister Mine, you wish to talk to me? Wilma, who normally discussed how the orphans were doing and what the orphanage needed, with a calm smile on her face, looked at Fran and me anxiously. Wilma, would you consider me my attendant? This isn't an order, but a question. You can say no if you like. Wilma's eyes wavered nervously, then she sighed and lowered her head. I truly appreciate the offer, but it would be wise to ask Rosina instead. Wilma glanced at Fran, then looked away with a troubled expression. She furrowed her brow a bit, then slowly opened her mouth as if she really didn't want to say what she was about to say. In the past, I was once fooled by a blue priest and taken to a flower offering. My mistress, Christine, noticed my absence and arrived in time to rescue me, but ever since then I have been uneasy around men. I will obey you if you order me to be your attendant, but if you do value my desires, I would like to stay in the girls' building of the orphanage. There are only children and girls here. In the nobles' quarters, the rooms of attendants were separated by gender and located completely separate from their master's room, but in the orphanage director's chambers, they were separated only by floor, and the girls upstairs had to pass through the first floor to leave. Visitors like Lutz and Benno often came to the second floor, not to mention Fran and other Grey Priests. It was far from an environment with no men. I understood Wilma's position, but there was something I didn't get. Isn't there a chance you'll be selected to offer flowers if you stay in the orphanage? There is not a blue priest whose eyes will fall on a girl as plain as myself, and yet someone tricked you into doing it, so someone was interested, Although Wilma probably kept her hair bundled tightly to stop it from standing out, her hair was an orange color that was noticeable no matter what she did, and anything that might be considered plain about her just served to make her seem more chaste. There would definitely be at least a few blue priests whose eyes fell on her. In that case, Wilma, I will ask the high priest to allow you to serve me as an attendant in name only, allowing you to stay at the orphanage. I intend to make many books for children containing art, so I will need your assistance no matter what. I believe it will be simpler just to give me an order. I don't want to force you to do work in an environment that will make you unhappy. I personally don't like people ordering me around, and since attendants moved into their master's chambers, their entire lives became their work. She would become consumed with anxiety if she felt awful every hour of every day while working. If I do not need to leave the orphanage, then I would love to be of assistance to you, sister mine. Wilma spoke with a bashful smile. I pumped myself up, preparing to convince the high priest at any cost so I could protect Wilma's smile, but Fran spoke out before it ever came to that. Sister mine, attendants always move to their master's chambers. She cannot stay in the orphanage. How do you intend to convince the high priest? I looked between Wilma and some nervous children watching from some distance away. There are not many Grey Shrine maidens to look after the young children right now. It's not uncommon for the children to catch sudden fevers in the night, and as the orphanage director, I would like my attendant to keep an eye on them. How is that? I see you didn't come here without thinking things through then. First, I find that somewhat relieving. That was pretty rude of him to say, but at the very least, Fran wasn't just being stubborn. The high priest would understand if I had reasoning to back me up. Do you think he would allow me to leave Wilma in the orphanage as my attendant? Doing so would be unprecedented, but given the current state of the orphanage and Wilma's situation, I believe that the high priest might possibly allow it if told all the details. With Fran's approval, I wrote a letter requesting a meeting with the high priest. He sent a reply saying we would discuss things in my room since he wanted to hear Fran's thoughts as well. Over the 5 days leading up to the meeting, I worked with all the vigor I had. I was having Gil make the thick paper that would be necessary for picture books in the mine workshop, with the promise that I would buy them through Lutz once it was ready. At the same time, I was telling Mom stories to the orphanage so that I could see which were well received by the kids and which would make good for good picture books. But the kids ended up asking what words meant so frequently that they never got to enjoy the story, and Wilma told me she wouldn't be able to draw art for them since she didn't know what life in the city was like. There was a bigger gap in cultural understanding between those in the temple and commoners than I had expected. On top of that, those in the temple had no innate understanding of anthropomorphism, animals acting and talking like people. Little pigs, or Momotaro, went over well with them. They just kept asking how animals could talk. It seemed that not even my own Japanese children's stories would go over well in picture books. Despite everything Benno said, I still thought it would be best if I drew the first picture book for my little sibling myself. In other news, Hugo and Ella learned almost all the recipes for the Italian restaurant, so we brought in a new chef. A man about the same age as Hugo was getting pumped about the food while shouting shocked exclamations just as his predecessor had. Ella, who was helping him, told him not to worry and that he'd get used to it soon, her expression making it clear that she was reminiscing over how far she had come. Finally, the day of the meeting arrived. The meeting was at 5th bell in the afternoon, so I didn't get to go to the book room like normal. I stayed in my chambers while learning how to welcome the high priest into my room and what his preferred kind of tea was. Eventually, a significant amount of time before the meeting, a bell signifying a visitor ran outside the door. "That'll be one of the high priest's attendants," said Fran while standing up and heading to the first floor. I couldn't tell the difference between myself, but apparently different sounds and waves of ringing the bell signified different things. Maybe the high priest was so busy he had to change the time of the meeting? "I have brought a gift from the high priest. Where shall I take it?" said the servant, who sounded like Arno. "To the second floor," replied Delia. "Our mistress will receive it right away." Hearing the conversation, I hurriedly plastered the dignified smile of a noble on my face. "Please excuse me, sister mine." With Arno at the head, a group of Grey priests brought in large boxes at Delia and Fran's instructions. Arno wrinkled his eyes nostalgically and looked around my room. "I see you have left the room unchanged, sister mine." "What?" "Oh, pay me no mind. 3 large boxes, 2 small boxes. That is everything. Please tell the high priest that I thank him ever so much." I spoke to Arno with a smile and a nod. The Grey priests lined up and left the room once again at Arno's lead. Fran watched them go, shut the front door behind them, and hurriedly climbed back to the second floor. Let us open them immediately. The high priest will be here before long. Delia, go to the workshop and summon Gil. Understood. Jeez, why did he have to deliver the gifts so soon before the meeting? Delia ran off, and Fran began to hurriedly open the boxes. Delia quickly returned with Gil and started helping Fran. Inside one big box was a bedding set. The other two boxes each contained an instrument, one adult-sized and one child-sized. The smaller boxes had various tools for maintaining the instruments. It seemed the high priest intended to educate me no matter the cost. Wow, I turned him down because I don't have an instrument, so he gave me 2 instruments. What a sight to behold. So, Fran, did you hear anything from the high priest about all these gifts? The sheer quantity of the gifts made me feel more conflicted than pleased. Especially the bedding set. Nobody had ever given me one as a gift, and it kind of felt like a bit much. Fran also looked conflicted. He became furious when you collapsed in the repentance chamber, questioning why you had no bed prepared, despite your tendency to collapse from weakness. But I still did not expect him to send bedding in its entirety. I had also thought I would need at least a mattress in the temple since I collapsed so often, but I hadn't expected the high priest to gift me one. I walked up the bed, which Gil and Delia had prepared, pressing down the mattress to see how it felt. The bedding the high priest had prepared wasn't a straw-packed mattress like I was used to, but a high-quality mattress like the one I used at Freya's house. The silky, smooth sheets felt nice on the touch and were covered with fancy embroidery. The cloth and embroidery alone would run an enormous cost. I got dizzy just thinking about how expensive it must have been. Fran, is it commonplace for nobles to send this manner of gifts to each other, or do I now owe a debt to him which I will need to pay later? What if he asks for the payment and I cannot afford it? I believe that this is his apology for sending you to the repentance chamber and leading you to collapse in ill health. You should be fine simply expressing your gratitude. My gratitude? How should I thank the gods this time? If I have to learn yet another new god's name just to express my thanks, I would lose my mind. Fran stifled a laugh with a hand over his mouth. This time, please thank the high priest, not the gods. After finding a place to put the tools and instruments, I offered the wooden boxes and cloth within them to my attendants, as was customary. Fifth bell rang not long afterward, and the high priest came immediately with Arno. I welcomed and greeted him just as Fran had taught me. You faltered as you spoke, but at least you've learned what to say, commented the high priest. The lack of any harsh rebuke meant that maybe I did sound more like a noble girl now. High priest, I thank you ever so much for the comfortable bedding you have gifted me. I thanked him after we reached the second floor, and for some reason he cradled his head. Did I do something wrong? I just thanked you, didn't I? You didn't have to specify what it was. Indeed, but there was no need for you to state the contents of the gift. In the future, be vague when giving your thanks. I appreciate the wonderful gift. You have granted my wish, and so on. Okay, don't say the contents of the gifts. I repeated on the inside, at which point the high priest grimaced and lowered his voice. Furthermore, tell no one that I gifted you bedding. Under normal circumstances, a man will only gift bedding for their family, their fiancé, or their mistress. Stating it in public will invite unthinkable misunderstandings. Yeah, you don't want that. Why would you do something so easily misinterpreted? The high priest didn't seem like the kind of person to do something so thoughtless. He wasn't me, after all. I didn't understand why he would run the risk of doing something that could be misunderstood like that. You were at fault here. Despite having collapsed in the temple several times before due to your poor health, you have refused to prepare bedding for yourself. I'm not done yet. You never would have prepared your... If I had done nothing... I could hardly believe my eyes when I saw Fran rest your unconscious body upon the boards of the empty bed. If I had done nothing, I imagine you never would have prepared your own bedding, he said with a glare. I avoided eye contact since I only ever thought about getting bedding at the exact moment I needed it, and then immediately forgot afterwards. Oh, I'm sorry. The high priest gave a fake cough and glanced at the table. I remembered that I hadn't offered a seat to him, and thus did so at once. As our visitor this time was the high priest, Fran prepared the tea instead of Delia. Despite using the same water and same tea, the tea Fran made always seemed to taste so different. Delia watched Fran carefully so that she could learn from his fluid, almost beautiful movements. It's been so long since I've had your tea, Fran. It smells as splendid as ever. The high priest's expression softened as he enjoyed his tea, which made Fran smile a little. Gil brought in a tray which Delia took and set onto the table. High priest, would you like cookies with your tea? These are less sweet than normal to suit the palate of a man. After eating a cookie, the high priest's eyes widened. The fact that he immediately went to take another one meant he probably liked them. Mine, where did you get these? At the moment, they are being made exclusively in my kitchen. I intend to serve these cookies in my Italian restaurant with tea, with the option to buy individual ones to take home. The moment I said that, the high priest began rubbing his temple as if trying to understand the implications of what I had just said. You have your hands in not just paper and Rensham, but in cooking as well? Yes, there are plans to hold a taste testing session before the restaurant opens in full. Please come if you have the time. It will be a restaurant that offers food fit for the nobility. Fran has already assured us of the quality, but I would like to eat the food of a true noble at least once. I practically yelled, please invite me to a meal, in the roundabout style of a noble, and the high priest was experienced enough in reading between the lines that he picked up on my intentions. He lowered his eyes in defeat and promised to invite me to lunch sometime in the near future. I pumped my fist below the table. That was one entry on Benno's list of problems settled. While at lunch with the high priest, I would thoroughly check the contents of the meal, how it tasted, and what the service was like. The high priest jumped straight to the point of the meeting after he had tried the tea and cookies. So, you wish to discuss Wilma? Would you permit Wilma to stay in the orphanage even after becoming my attendant? The high priest frowned in confusion. Attendants, as their name implied, were expected to attend to their master. Those in the orphanage all wished to leave, and it was unheard of for an orphan to wish to stay there if given the opportunity to escape. There isn't anyone there to look after the pre-baptism kids, so I would like to use my authority as orphanage director to have Wilma there so that she might take care of them. Wilma herself wishes for this as well. High priest, added Fran, I support her request. The children are in poor health and frequently have fits in the middle of the night. Wilma and Sister Mine are both very worried about them. Fran's follow-up made the high priest stroke his chin in thought. Wilma staying at the orphanage will be all the more reason to make Rosina your attendant as well. So he's not saying you can't have Wilma, but you have to have Rosina too. I have prepared the instruments already. That should settle your complaints. He glared at me, but I still just didn't agree. Why is it so important for me to learn to play an instrument? Will I need to play music in religious ceremonies? It will not be important whatsoever in the temple. There are many blue priests with no appreciation for the arts, said the high priest while taking out a small magic tool and placing it on the table. It was the anti-eavesdropping magic tool. I reached out and clenched it in my hand as the high priest did the same with the other half. Your future will inevitably be one intertwined with that of nobility. It is best you prepare to enter noble society now. But I have no intentions of leaving my family, hence only commuting to the temple rather than moving here completely. However, despite knowing that I let my mana go on a rampage to protect my family, the high priest was confident enough to say that I would inevitably enter noble society. You may not know this, but only couples with similar quantities of mana can have kids. You have enough mana to comfortably offer 10 small magic stones during an offering, and you can enter my hidden room. In other words, you will only be able to have children with a noble. It will be extremely difficult for you to marry in the lower city. Speaking of which, Delia had mentioned something about equivalent amounts of mana being needed for a couple in the past. I hadn't really thought about it since I was so mad at the cruelty of the blue priest, but the same rule applied to me. Regardless, I found it hard to care. I've never had any hope of getting married, so I don't think that's a significant problem. Wait, why do you say that? As you know, High Priest, I am very weak. No man would want to marry a girl who can barely move and catches fevers all the time. I would just be dead weight to them. The first requirement for being a good wife in our poverty-stricken part of the city was being healthy. A pleasant personality and a working spirit came afterward. One's beauty depended on their sewing ability and such, but I was out of the question before it came to that. Not that it mattered to me, after all. Love and romance had hardly been a part of my life, even in my Irano days. I would be fine with a life of just making and reading books here. Commoners and nobles are fundamentally different. The mana of a child is largely influenced by their mother. You have so much mana, it is hard to believe that you are a devouring child born by chance. Due to the diminished quantity of nobles, when you come of age, nobles with similarly significant mana will flock around you. You have only been ignored up until now because you're so weak you might die at any moment, which will be a waste of all the money spent on raising you. You will not be able to escape from the families of every blue priest here. I hadn't thought that I was being seen that way. There were about 10 blue priests here, and who knew how far their extended families went. It would be impossible to deny all of their advances in my weak position. A shudder ran down my spine. I hadn't thought of my future from that perspective. Benno had said I would likely be kicked out in 5 years once the number of nobles began to increase again, so I always thought that I would just leave the temple when the time came. I would have been fine extending my lifespan with Taos. I never thought that nobles would be after me as a convenient mother for their children. Lay nobles will not have enough mana. You will likely be used as a tool to form connections with arch nobles. Whether you end up as a prisoner kept alive to make children, or as a wife with a respectable status within the family, depends entirely on whether you can conduct yourself like a noble. Education is vital if you intend to protect yourself. Understood. I will make Rosina my attendant and educate myself as best I can. The high priest replied with a firm good and set his magic tool on the table. That signified the end of that conversation. I set my magic tool down too and smiled at the high priest. While you're here, could you show me what you mean? I would like to know what degree of artistic ability is expected from a noble. I pointed at the instrument and asked him to play it. He sighed as he put the magic tool away. Fran, bring me the harpspiel. Harpspiel, whatever. The two instruments he had gifted me were apparently called harpspiels. The larger one was for adults and the smaller one was for kids, as expected. It was like a combination of a lute and a harp, most resembling a bandura. Its body was shaped like a pear cut in half, with the back half of it curving a bit. The front half had a sound hole like a guitar, which was as ornamental as it was functional. The adult-sized one had straight lines decorating it, while the kid-sized one had a pattern of growing vines. At a glance, they seemed to have about 50 to 60 strings strung on them. The pins of the instrument, which all the strings were wrapped around, were made of something like ivory, giving more color to the wooden instrument. The head was adorned by a carving of a horse's head, which made me want to joke about it being a Morinkur, a Mongolian horse head fiddle, but that reference was just too obscure. Not that they wouldn't understand what I meant in this world anyway. The high priest adjusted his posture a bit, put his legs together, and rested the harpsteel between his thighs a little. He supported the instrument's neck with his left hand, and plucked a string with his middle finger. The air trembled, and music resembling a guitar's reverberated through the room. He brushed his right hand's fingers against the strings like one might play a harp, melting the air with high, clear notes. The instrument had seemingly already been tuned, so the high priest lowered his eyes with the harpsteel in its position. His right hand played the main notes, while his left hand brought out the low notes that served as a bass. His longer fingers danced, starting a song I had never heard before. It was my first time hearing the instrument being played, and I had never heard the song before, but I could immediately tell that the high priest was an expert musician. He was good. The minstrels loitering around the east gate couldn't even compare. Incidentally, I didn't like minstrels too much. The music didn't really resonate with me, and it was always hard to understand what they were singing. It felt like attending a fancy play as a child and catching nothing. Oh, no, I'm not singing that. No. Hell no. You ain't catching me singing. The high priest began to sing with the song. It was a song about growing plants and praising the sun's blessing, and the lyrics readily brought forth images of a lively summer landscape. I always thought he had a deep voice that carried well, but when he began to sing, it became almost frighteningly beautiful. Maybe this was normal for songs you hadn't heard before, but I found myself absorbed in it and completely focused on listening to the lyrics. When the final chord was struck, I couldn't help but let out an awed gasp. The high priest handed the harpsteel to Fran. That should do it. What did you think, mine? Awesome. I think no girl would reject you if you sang a song of love to them. She's not wrong. To be honest, she is not wrong here. Yeah, no girl would reject him if he sang a song of love to them. What is wrong with you? The high priest glared at me, which made me realize I had accidentally said what I was thinking with no filter. Uh-oh. I only put a hand over my mouth and tried to recover. It was such a beautiful song that I found myself absorbed in it, but I don't think I'll be able to play on that high of a level. Education is not accomplished overnight. You will need to practice on a daily basis. Give it a try. I naturally had no way of escaping the studious high priest, and thus a music lesson began out of nowhere.